Welcome back to the Talking Wolves podcast. It's another win for Wolves, 3 matches unbeaten, and survival looks pretty much guaranteed now. Although, you know, this is Wolves, so who knows? My name's Dave as a party. I'm bringing you a bit of a Brucey bonus of an episode, really. We don't tend to do midweek podcasts, but it was always the plan behind closed doors for us to do something here, and I'm delighted to be alongside Jordan Russell. Jord, how are you keeping?
I'm all good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, all good. Thank you, mate. All good. It's warm outside. We've just sort of had a mini discussion on how we could try and cool ourselves down. Windows are open, t-shirts are on. Although George's got his hoodie on, so I don't know if you might be sweating throughout this, mate. But
yeah, I might change I might have to take my camera off midway through. I work in the loft as well, which is the worst thing. But I've literally quickly taken the dog out before I do this because I've got some work to do after the podcast. So it's been a bit of a hectic one, to be fair, but we want to get one out for the fans that are listening.
No, I appreciate you doing it in between your busy work schedule as well, and your schedule of watching Simon Wilson, which seems to be becoming a staple of these Talking Wolves podcasts. Because Joe mentioned, I mean, I used to watch Simon Wilson ages ago. And for anyone that's not aware, he's like a travel vlogger as such. He goes all sorts of weird and wonderful places. And I think, Jord, it was weird because we had a slight conversation, I think, last weekend about him. And then he started popping up on my TikTok. The one thing I noticed with Simon Wilson is that he either has the best ever sleep he's had in ages or the worst ever sleep he's had in ages, not in between. And I thought, when you're staying in a 1-star hotel in Kazakhstan or whatever, I don't think you're going to have a brilliant sleep, mate, to be honest.
No, so a bit of context. So, like, I know Joe and Dave, you were talking about it on the podcast about 3-4 weeks ago, and I was like, don't know who Simon Wilson is. And I was in Abu Dhabi this weekend, went away for the weekend with Emma and the dog, and someone's back in the cab, well, back in the house or whatever, and thought I'll quickly watch Stick to Football and caught up with the episode, and thought I'll watch that for a bit, and someone's YouTube Premium signed him, so I subscribed him to Talking Wolves for one. Bosh.
Oh,
number two, like, it was just Simon. The first thing that came up was, obviously, 'cause it's all on AI and recent watches for that person, was Simon Wilson, and it was him in Kazakhstan, and I thought, go on, I'll give it a watch.
Kazakhstan one as well? Yeah,
it was the Kazakhstan one I watched first, where it was 5-star versus 1-star, I think, or something. And it's the first time I've come across him, and I couldn't stop watching him. And I'll level with, and I can't work out if he's the nicest bloke in the world or he's just the most jarring guy I've ever met in my life. But I couldn't turn it off. Like, he's so polite, but too polite, I think. And I can't work out if he can't be that nice.
Being like serious, like, yeah.
I don't think he can't be that nice. And if he's listening to Talking Wolves podcast, which I don't think he would be, if he is, I'd love to have a chat with him because I don't know I don't know. He's on that borderline of being too nice, like / psychotic. I think it's that. Yeah.
He's a big Liverpool fan, to be fair. I'd have to see if we can get him on for the preview. End of the season,
Hopefully he never watches any of this.
Yeah, because he did when Liverpool were in the Champions League final. I think it's the one against Real Madrid. He bought a car for 50 quid. In Paris. He bought a car for 50 quid and drove this car. I think Jamie Carragher did a leg of the journey with him as well.
Really?
Drove this car, £50, and I don't know how it managed. I don't know how it passed an MOT, let alone got its way to Paris. But yeah, there we go. But I mean, sticking on football, Jord, it's another successful week for Wolves. And like I said earlier, we don't tend to do the midweek podcast, but I thought we've obviously been international break. I felt that like this window between the West Ham and Ipswich game was going to be quite pivotal as such. And thankfully now it's a lot clearer. And I think the win last night against West Ham, which we're going to discuss now, was huge. And it takes so much pressure off Saturday's game. We're recording this just before the Wednesday evening kickoff. So you guys may be listening to this as they're kicking off. You may be listening to it in the following day. So you'll be a little clearer on the other results. But either way, Wolves will be 9 to 12 points clear still. And in a really nice position going into that Ipswich game. Jord, the West Ham game, Vitor started unchanged. That's sort of what I discussed and predicted on the match preview. And I think, especially with the players available, because Rodrigo Gomes and Gedge are out again with slight knocks, you know, that's the team that's gotten results for the last 2 games against Everton and Southampton. I think he would have been daft to mix it up, wouldn't he? I think you know, sticking with that same lineup was fair to everyone involved.
Yeah, I always think you don't change a winning team or a team, especially, change that even more to a team that struggled for the best part of the season a team that hasn't lost the previous game, you probably shouldn't change it either because points are important. I think he's now getting to a point where he's learning the squad a little bit, and I think Bar and Cunha coming back in, which I think, again, we'll talk about that later on, I'm sure. I think he trusts this team now. I think it's pretty settled. I think he trusts this 11 to go out there and get him results. And I think there's still pockets of fans that say I'd play Hwang, for example, or Sarabia, or whoever else, Geds, Rodrigo Gomes.
Yeah.
I just think he found a system and a style and an 11 that gave him a bit of stability. He could trust it, knew what he was getting out of it, and actually he's guided us to safety a lot sooner than any of us would have thought when he first took that job on. So yeah, for me, I wasn't surprised there was no changes yesterday. And I mean, West Ham are a bit of a weird team at the moment as well, and I thought they'd probably, well, actually not even probably, I thought they'd cause us a lot more problems than they actually did last night, if I'm honest with you. I thought they were really disappointing.
Yeah, it's always interesting, and sort of sorry to go back to the preview again because I mentioned it a couple of times on my reaction yesterday. It's always interesting talking to opposition fans, which is what we do if you watch the previews, because he mentioned almost how defensively they were a lot better under Graham Potter, but going forward, he'd really held them back, and they were averaging about 2 shots on target a game. And so going into the game yesterday, I almost felt, just because of that, having that one conversation, I felt a little bit more confident because I think with Wolves being so up and down this season, I've never really kept a really close eye on certain teams, so I didn't really know what to expect. And everything that he said yesterday on the preview, because he even said with the way West Ham were playing, he didn't think it was going to be a classic, which I don't think it was. But they only had 1 shot on target all game, and so what he said was perfect, really. They were a really strange side to watch because they've got quality there, don't get me wrong, but Wolves seemed to deal with them. I think the key chances West Ham had were gifted to them, which I'm sure we'll talk about as well. But, ultimately, I think yesterday was probably the winning. If someone were to win the game, which obviously it was Wolves, it's who's going to sort of come up with something out of nowhere or come up with a bit of quality. And thankfully for us, Strand Larsen, Jord, who's now scored 3 goals in 2 games, all of a sudden looking like, a much better player. And, we go back to a few weeks ago where we almost did quite a bit of a segment on him when he was getting a lot of stick. And some people commented, to be fair, saying, I didn't really read in or look into the stats. And so I understand him and probably appreciate him a little bit more as a player. And since then, really, he's come on leaps and bounds and, starting to find the net. And I think, again, yesterday, there's areas of his game that he can still improve on and polish, I think. But he's looking like a player with so much more confidence now, isn't he? Like, even just try the effort that he had yesterday. Sometimes, those chances will be blocked or saved, but he's tried his luck. And, ultimately, it's ended up in the back of the net. And ultimately, it's ended up being the winning goal.
Yeah. And before going on to Strand Larsen, going back to sort of what you were saying about West Ham there, I think they're in a similar spot to when again, it's different eras, but when Solbakken and coming after McCarthy, gone from having players at a functional system, counter-attacking team to Potter who wants to dominate possession. It just didn't quite work. It's not working at the moment. It's what happened under Solbakken for Wolves, playing with McCarthy's squad and trying to do that. So West Ham will come out the other end of it. I do think Potter's a good manager, but they're going to have to give him time because you can't go from, what was it, about 6 years of Moyes, 7 years of Moyes, it felt like, to then Lopetegui as well, another counter-attacking manager, to someone who then wants to go and dominate the ball. I just don't think...
They're already writing him off, some West Ham fans, to be fair. I said it on the opposition preview on the West Ham page. I think he's a highly rated manager, Potter, but he will need time. And the issue is with West Ham, not just West Ham, there's a lot of Premier League teams and fan bases the same, but they jump on a manager. And this sort of 6 months is, for me, if I was a West Ham fan looking at Potter, this 6 months that he's had in charge is who's going to be part of my team next year and who isn't.
Judge him next season, give him a pre-season.
Exactly. So I think that'll be the key. Yeah, I think that'll be the key.
So I just wanted to mention that. But yeah, going back to Strand Larsen, I think, like we all, it was before the Southampton, it was after the Everton game where we were sticking up for him, I think, on this podcast a little bit. Because
either that or the Bournemouth. Maybe the Cup or League game. Yeah, it was just before the Everton game, I think. Yeah.
Maybe. And yeah, his underlying stats are good, and I think you see a guy who's 6'3", 6'4", and you think he's going to be great in the air, and you've got to hit long balls to him. That's how you're going to play. But he's much more of a modern day striker than a target man, I would say. And I think actually now we're feeding him to his strengths. We're giving him a bit of service. We're putting balls in earlier into the box, and he's gambling and getting on the end of them. I think he took his goal well yesterday. I think he was. I know Gomes had an unbelievable run, but he set up the Managerial one where Managerial's at the bar, and he just works his bollocks off. I don't really know what there isn't to like. Could he? Has he missed a few big chances? Yeah, he did around Christmas time. I think he missed a fair few, and I think he was really sort of having a bit of a dip in confidence. But 10 goals in a team that's 17th in the Premier League is nothing to be sniffed at, and there's still another 8 games to go. He could quite easily end up on 13, 14. And if you'd have said that at the start of the season, Strand Larsen's coming in, first season in English football, he's going to get you 14 league goals. You go, that's £25 million well spent, that is. Yeah. So I think there's more to come from him. And I think, we've said it a few times in this podcast, I think Strand Larsen will look better when he's got pace running in behind him. And we haven't still got that. And that's the biggest thing, again, I'll reiterate. I think we need to sort out in the summer within this Wolves squad is, we need quality, granted, but we need some pace. And I think as soon as you've got pace running behind Strand Larsen, that'll add another facet to his game. And I think we'll see an even better Strand Larsen next season.
Yeah, again, I agree with that. And I think you have to consider, we've gone 3 games unbeaten now without Cunha. That's 3 games unbeaten without a player of 60 to 70 million pounds worth of talent. So we would, especially with the comments last weekend, we assume he's going to move on if the money is reinvested, and you can add 60 to 70 million pounds of talent into that squad. All of a sudden, the team's looking even stronger. I think I agree, Strand Larsen, and you had the point there about pacing behind. I think there were times yesterday where Bellegarde's been fantastic, but I don't know if it was a confidence thing or he just didn't back himself. He had the ball and just didn't maybe want to drive forward. He was almost waiting for players to come around him. And then right at the end with Strand Larsen, the first bit of energy we showed in a short while was Managerial running in behind. Strand Larsen found him, and Managerial was unlucky, really. The finish wasn't fantastic. But Strand Larsen could have probably slid in and nicked that to make it 2-0 and kill the game off. I don't know if he was being a little bit fairer to Managerial to see if it was going to creep in first. But I agree. He's come on so much. He's looking really, really good now. And you mentioned his goal numbers there. Double figures now. Raul Jimenez scored 13 on his debut season. Of course, that was with penalties, though. Strand Larsen, Wolves haven't had a penalty all season, so 10 non-penalty goals is a really, really solid return. And like you said, I think if any, a lot of Wolves fans would have taken that at the start of the season. But what's good as well, I think maybe we need to add one more player next season that can contribute towards the goals, because Cunha scored a great amount, Strand Larsen scored a great amount. Other than that, goals are a little bit hit and miss on other areas of the pitch. But if you can start to get a front three where everyone's chipping in 10 plus goals a season, I think you're in a much a solid place there. And another player you mentioned, and we've mentioned there, is Marshall Managerial. Another really interesting and intriguing game for him, because I think Wolves fans can't quite figure out what sort of player Managerial is as such. Probably neutral fans watching at home will be thinking, what a confusing player. Because again, I thought balls coming into him yesterday, he really struggled to hold off the ball and hold off the player. But like you mentioned in the first half, picked up some great spaces and hit the bar. So unfortunate, to be fair. On another day, that's a fantastic finish and 2-0. And then the chance at the end there that I mentioned. And then right at the end of the game where he drives forward 25, 30 yards and gets everybody going, Vitor Pereira and his assistant going as well. Jord, there's people, Gully and Matt, that haven't really been full of compliments for Managerial. Not writing him off, but just not saying he's part of this. He shouldn't be part of this first team squad. But you can see why. I think Vitor was raving about having someone like him in the team, and you can see why. If you can look past that technical ability, the physical presence that he's got, it helped a lot yesterday, I think.
Yeah, I'm very high on the stock on Managerial. And I think, again, giving Joe another shout out here, that's twice already, he's not even here. But if anyone follows Concept Skating, when he came, obviously Joe put out the stat pizza. Let's call it.
Yeah,
It looks like a pizza after Matt Cooper's had a skinful. But you sort of knew what player you were getting. You could see from that chart, effectively, like technically not going to be the most gifted footballer, but he's extremely effective. He's in the top percentile in a lot of other things. And if someone says to me, "Is Marshall Monetzi a good footballer?" I think I'd struggle to give you a fair answer from a yes or no with that. Is Marshall Monetzi technically a good footballer? I would say no, not really in comparison to the rest of the squad. Is Marshall Monetzi an effective footballer? Very effective footballer. And I think he does so much work, pressing, intensity, gets us further up the pitch. I mean, that run, I know he missed the opportunity in the 90th minute. He'd been doing so much dog work, and he still made that selfless run for Larsen. And I don't know what there isn't to like about him. And I saw the first thing, you go on social media last night, and I was thinking, right, it's a great win that is, we're safe. Seeing like accounts digging Monetzi out of never a footballer, not this, not that. Like, come on, have a day off. Like,
I don't get how you could slag him off after that performance completely, because I think he did, like I mentioned there, a couple of times I was disappointed with his hold-up play, but I think he did more than enough to outweigh that in terms of his overall performance. I think that's, especially if you win there and pretty much guarantee survival, it's harsh to be digging out players straight away like that.
Again, like, let's go back to it. Like, Monetzi will never control a football game like Andre and Gomes can in midfield. He'll never do that. He'll never whack one in from 30 yards like Cunha can. But he does a lot of selfless work that lets the rest of the team shine. Like, he gets in positions where he just seems to be in the right place at the right time. And yeah, he's not putting them away at the moment, but he will. He can't keep getting in those sort of positions and not convert more than you don't. So I actually think he's going to score goals for us. And I think I wasn't on the podcast. I think when Gully was saying, but he was saying, like, I don't think he's going to be a starter within this team. Like, he started the last 3 games without Cunha without Cunha, and we've got 7 points out of 9 games. And you can't tell me Monetzi's not contributed to those 3 performances in those three games. And yeah, like, I'm a big believer in him. I think, again, he's so effective. He does so much dog work. I think he's going to be a real cult hero for fans. Like, again, Andre and Gomes yesterday, I could wax lyrical about how good they were, especially in that first half, bossing the game, midfield, and the class midfielders. But Monetzi's going to be one of those, I think, that the South Bank are going to be singing about for years. I just think he's like one of those types. He gives everything, and I'm really glad we've got him. I really, really am. And I will call out Matt and Gully right now. We can do it for this season, or we can do it for next season. But I would say from now to the end of the season, he'll score 2 more goals, and we'll put a bet on it. Gully, Matt, both of you, whoever wants it, and the winnings will go to the Wolves Foundation. That's where we'll put it. So, Matt, Gully, so you call out. Let's put your money where your mouth is. Let's go.
I like that shout. To be fair, 2 more goals. The positions that he's picking up, God, he could, like I say, he could have had a few, but I think I'll go back to what I said earlier about players chipping in with goals, because if you can get the attackers, and Monetzi, wherever he's playing, or if he's playing a similar position next season, because by the way, we saw this goal as guys like a holding type midfielder. He's playing almost as part of a front 3, which is so unique almost for a player of that stature, to play there. I have no doubt between now and the end of pre-season, Vitor and his staff will be working on his technique and his finishing and so on. I know he's hit the bar with that chance yesterday, and it's easy for me to say, but if he's hitting it with that power and technique and it goes just on the underside of the bar, that's a phenomenal looking finish.
Yeah, it's a great finish.
Yeah.
I've got a question for you, Dave. Sorry to interrupt you. Because I think Monetzi's pretty much doing the same sort of gig as what Dendoncker did under Nuno. With Neves and Martino, Dendoncker was the legs, the energy. Yeah. He did the dog work for them two to shine and control games. I think Monetzi's doing that at the moment for Andre and Gomes, should I say. Who do you think was a better footballer, Monetzi or Dendoncker? Or who was more effective?
Well, I mean, I didn't mind Dendoncker again.
I didn't either, but
I think it's going to have a similar thing where Dendoncker gets a lot of stick, or got a lot of stick, I should say. But I used to say then, you could probably watch podcasts or videos from back then. I said, people don't rate Dendoncker because you can't ping the ball 30 to 40 yards like Neves or Moutinho could. Exactly like you said earlier, he can't put the ball in the back. Well, he might be able to, but he's not going to have digs to test the goalkeeper or score goals from 30 yards. He does the dirty work, and we won't go back to what we said about Strand Larsen. They're doing Cunha's running for him. Benetti was doing Cunha's running for him. And there's no surprise now. Yes, we're playing maybe teams slightly weaker in terms of quality, but there's no surprise now where all of a sudden we're seeing this sort of togetherness and spirit and fighting attitude. Someone posted a picture earlier of the game, the reverse fixture against West Ham, where it spilled over. Lemina's scrapping, Bowen. No one can control him. Everyone looks angry and frustrated. To yesterday, where everyone's just lapping it up, loving it, the passion. And it's so crazy what certain things can change in a squad. But no, I think you're right. In terms of Manetti, certain people won't rate him because of the qualities that you've mentioned there. But I think he's a manager's dream, because a manager would, 100%. If you had 11 Marshall Manettis, you'd have one hell of a team, I think,
Well, you give Tony Pulis' Stoke team a good one. You're not going to control many games, but you'd be effective for sure. Yeah. And that's the thing. This is what I've moaned more than most this season about Wolves. Don't eat shit, probably the last few years on this podcast, but I just can't call out players where they're running the bollocks off and they're impacting games. And he can't spray a 50-yard ball, but he doesn't need to, because you've got Andre and Gomes who'll do that for him.
Yep.
So
I mean, touching on those two again, they were fantastic, I thought, yesterday. Both doing their own thing. Andre, I think he looked frustrated when he got subbed off, but ultimately he was on a booking. I think Vitor has learned from that mistake earlier in the season when Joao Gomes got sent off against Arsenal. But again, just so good. Again, a player that was... I think you'll find, if you listened to the Talking Wolves podcast archives, you'll probably find some stinking takes over the years. But I think we've been extremely fair to players, and players that were out of favour or not particularly backed by the head coach at the time, which was Gary O'Neill. And we've done it with Strand Larsen, which I've already mentioned. But Andre was another one, Jord, that we'd mentioned, and I think you in particular had backed pre-Christmas. Joao Gomes obviously signed a new deal yesterday, out of the blue, which was great news. I think to be protecting our assets like that. Took some serious knocks, struggled to walk for part of the game yesterday, but played the full 90. I thought he was phenomenal, but those two were just coming on leaps and bounds. And we found that two young players there, because obviously Neves and Moutinho, we had a great partnership. Moutinho obviously on the slightly older side of the spectrum, but those two now, it won't happen because this is football, and Wolves, whether you like it or not, are going to be seen as a stepping stone club. But those two there could be the future of the Wolverhampton Wanderers midfield for the foreseeable, really. They were fantastic again yesterday.
Yeah, they're great. And I think you'll struggle to find a midfield two in the Premier League. I've said this again many times on here. Even maybe in European football, better than those two as a two. And that sounds daft for a team that's 17th in the Premier League, but it's the truth. I think, they've shown it many times already. Since Pereira's come in, I thought Anfield second half, they completely bossed that game. Yeah. Last night, the first half, they were taking the piss out of Paqueta and Ward-Prowse and co. Like, they were just brilliant. They were really, really good. And I think it's a joy to have them. I think we've got to, I put a tweet out yesterday before the game about build the team around them two for years to come with Gomez's contract contract signing, should I say. And I think we get another... If you said to me, right, you've got another full season of them next season together, they could both go my blessing at that point. I think they could really be the catalyst for us to elevate ourselves back into that sort of fringe European top half of the Premier League with just them two as the base and build a team around them two. And look, that they will go on to bigger and better things, unfortunately for Wolves, unless Foes and all of a sudden start showing a lot of ambition and we do a Forest next season. They're brilliant. That's all. I could talk about them for ages, but let's keep it simple. They're brilliant, fantastic footballers. Lucky to have them, and they're going about it the right way. They're above Wolverhampton Wanderers, and I think they know it as well. Or if they don't know it, I'm telling them they're above where we are right now as a football club. But they're going about it the right way, and they're putting performances in, going about it quietly, dominating games. And then you've got the other side of the coin with Cunha, which we'll probably talk about at some point on this podcast, I'm sure, where he's doing everything other than that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, we'll talk about that shortly, to be fair. We'll finish off on the West Ham game because we restricted them to a few chances. Like I said earlier, though, Jord, the chances they did have, the clear-cut ones, were ones that we tended to give to them. And I think, although we won the game and kept a clean sheet, which is a massive bonus as well, by the way, I think in terms of the back three, Doc looked pretty good and he put a great chance on the plate for Strand Larsen in the second half. Agbadou and Totti, probably one of the shakier performances. I'll say Agbadou in the first half was a couple of times where the ball got trapped under his feet, seemed to settle into the game. But Totti, I think he'll know. Vitor made it clear in his post-match press conference. And I saw a few Wolves fans replying to Totti's tweet as well. Just at times, dawdling on the ball slightly, giving it away. Now, again, I mentioned this on my reaction. I don't think that was solely on Totti, because I think Aït-Nouri's role in the team yesterday was strange, where he kept drifting in field and really restricting the support that Totti had around him as like an outball. And we go back to players that we've praised on the podcast, and I've always stuck with Totti, but I can recognise that was a bit of a shaky performance. But it was one of those, Jord. I think, I suppose we got away with it, but probably just need to. I think Vitor will be making Totti aware that he's probably got to be a little bit better in the future there.
He just didn't have a good game for Totti. Like, he's been that good since Pereira's come in. He looked like Joao Gomes of a couple of years ago, where he looked like a rugby player, a guy who played rugby all his life. And I know we've said a few times he plays with Rockports on his feet in the past, and he definitely put his Dr. Martens back on last night because he was all over the shop, to be fair. But what I will say about Totti is I still think, defensively speaking, I think he defended quite well against Bowen at times.
I agree,
but yeah, with the ball at his feet, he wasn't fantastic last night, to be honest with you. And again, like someone else, what you mentioned there, with the back three, Doherty, I thought he's been brilliant as well. Honestly, I don't think enough gets said about Doherty, because he's been at the club. I know he went away and come back, but he's been at the club and associated with Wolves for so many years. He's been a revelation in this system. And the ball to Strand Larsen second half, but he actually made a good block off Evan Ferguson in the first half as well, where Totti and Necnery, and again, people are quick to criticise Doherty. I always think harshly. They're quick to criticise, but you don't really hear the praise back the other way, and I just think it's worth calling out. I think he's been unreal for a few months now. Really, really good.
It's interesting because it's going to be a really interesting summer and pre-season in regards to that backline, because we saw this week again Mosquera signing a new deal. So it was a couple of days worth of a new contract. So it was Monday night, Mosquera signed a new deal. And to be fair, I put a post there because I put post out because I said, you've gone from, in about less than 12 months, the defence looking like one of the weakest and worst parts of this team to one of the strongest, including the depth. Because you'll have Totti and Agbadou, Nasser Giga, who I was expecting probably to play a little bit more football. Santiago Bueno's still there. Obviously, Mosquera to come back injury. And then you've got Doc. You've still got Moy Pugh. So I'm assuming there will be one or two sales, maybe a loan out next season. But everyone was saying, Agbadou, Totti, Mosquera back line. Hey, what about Doc? Because like you said, he's been so solid, hasn't he? And it was a situation, Gary O'Neill towards the end was just throwing everything at the wall to see what would stick. And he was trying Semedo right wing back, right centre back, and Doc at right wing back. And Vitor, similar thing, just swapped them over. And it's worked brilliant. And I think we saw it yesterday where probably what he's wanted to see a little bit more from Doc, where he's pushing forward into the attack and allowing just sort of Agbadou and Totti to stay as the back two there. But Doc getting involved, almost sort of what we saw from him under Nuno. And he's unlucky not to have got an assist, like I mentioned, for that chance with Strand Larsen. But I do think you're right. And I don't know maybe it's because he's like an Irish player. He's been here for a long time. It's easy for you to pin the blame rather than on someone else. But, he's sort of under the radar a little bit, Jord, in terms of quality. I agree with you. And I don't know, there's surely still a place for him in the team. Because I remember, when did we sign him? Started this season, was it?
Yeah, I think it was a 2-year deal, wasn't it?
Yeah, and everyone was saying, what are we doing? But I think at the time, well, we all knew at the time it's probably going to be as a right wing back, but he's come in and again, just been, I don't mean you, unless there was an injury or suspension, I don't mean you'd probably change that back three now between now and the end of the season.
No, I don't think so. And I think probably the plan was Giga would come into that back three. I think that's why we bought him. So he's come with a good pedigree himself. I'm not sure his English is as good as what Agbadu's was, so Agbadu could probably just slot in a little bit and take to it a little bit easier. But Doherty's just been playing extremely well, and so you can't change a winning team for one, and secondly as well, when someone's playing that well, what message that sent to Doherty that you're playing arguably the best football in his Wolves career from a defensive perspective, I would say, to then just drop him. You can't do that. And again, I think Mosquera signing that deal is very good for us. I think he looked every bit of the part earlier on in the season. He allows us to play a bit further up, higher line, quick, mobile, aggressive. I like what I see with Mosquera, but you can't trust him to come back in and start playing Tuesday, Saturday, or loads of football after coming off an ACL. Like, I think, it's going to take a bit of time for him, but let's just appreciate we've actually got, like you say, you've got depth there, you've got quality there as well. And I even think Bueno, when he came on, albeit for 10, 15 minutes, he made a couple good blocks and a couple, I think one was off Fulkrug, I think one was off Bowen as well, where he come on and he did a job as well. So I think we've got a bit of quality there for sure in that area for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, it will be interesting. It's at the moment really, really strong there, but it will be interesting from next season what happens. You would assume, like I mentioned, maybe a couple of loans or maybe one sale out of that just to sort of, streamline it a little bit. But in terms of quality there at the moment, it looks much better than what it was sort of before the January window anyway. And the passion, like I mentioned earlier, Jord, from Vitor and his coaching staff. Now, unfortunately, Vitor Pereira picked up a booking at half-time. I think his assistant picked up a booking towards the end where he was getting a little bit too excited running down the touchline. So they've both got touchline bans for Saturday's game against Ipswich. So it will be interesting to see if that affects things slightly at Portman Road. But it's nice, George, to feel like there's somebody in the dugout who cares now. Not that Gary O'Neill and not that Lopetegui didn't care, because Lopetegui was quite, animated at times as well. But Vitor talks about the fans, wanting to be with the fans, speaking to the fans all the time. He said, they charge him up with happiness, but that passion on the sideline yesterday, because fans were sort of involved in that as well. It was such a nice feeling. It's the first time we've felt that sort of passion towards Wolverhampton Wanderers in a short while.
Yeah, I think it feels like Nuno, doesn't it, a little bit? And starting to feel like I'm falling in love with another manager. Because I really like Lopetegui for what it was worth. I didn't like Lage. I like Lopetegui, but I wouldn't say he was passionate and didn't really talk about the fans but he was here for a short time. And Gary O'Neill said a lot of bullshit that I never really bought into throughout the whole thing. So, but with Pereira, I think you believe it. You can see the players are all in on him as well. And I know there's nonsense rumours about De Rossi and all this sort of stuff in the week, which was just stupid. But like Vitor Pereira's doing this with, I would still call it not his team, really. Mm-hmm. He's not really put his stamp on it. He's signed a couple of players who've made an impact. He's got us results. I think we're 9th in the Premier League since he's taken over in form. Like Gary O'Neill said this lot was down in November. And we all knew it was bullshit. We knew he was at his depth. And Pereira's come in. I think he's simplified things. He's got rid of Lamina. He was obviously a bad egg and needed to go. He's dealt with stuff. I think there's going to be no bullshit with him. You're either on or you're either with us or you're against us. And that's going to be it. And I think that'll be the same for Cunha come the summer. Like, mate, you're either with us or you're not. And if you're not, see you later.
Well, he sort of sided with Cunha a little bit in recent times. But you remember back in January when Cunha was sort of throwing his arms in the air. It was the Chelsea game.
Yeah.
And Vitor, wasn't happy with that and was very vocal about that as well. The Dawson thing was at the time, and it still is now, a little bit confusing, but they've dealt with that properly in a way that Vitor's obviously made it clear to him that he wasn't part of the plans and nothing else has been said, which is fair enough. So it will be interesting because I think come the end of the season, it's shown to grow as a football team, yes, you need investment, but also you need a squad of 18 to 20 players that want to play for the football team and want to fight for their places. And I think it's pretty obvious at the moment. There's a couple of players such as Dawson, I think, maybe I'm being a bit harsh, probably not good enough for where we needed to go. And then there's players like Cunha who don't want to be here. So I think come the summer, Vitor Cunha is an unbelievable footballer. We'll talk about this in a second, but doesn't want to be here. And I'm sure Wolves would rather spend 60 million on a player or a group of players in whichever way they do it that want to fight for the Wolves shirt. And I think he can if he's got a group of players that can do that next season, like the likes of Andre and Joao Gomes celebrating a tackle. That's fucking brilliant. That is that you want to fight, you want the results, and they're ecstatic. Maybe on the sideline, maybe they know they're getting a massive survival bonus. Maybe that was part of the contract, but I'm all for that. And the so far he's dealt with things properly. In my opinion, he's saying the right things. Reading certain articles, I think he's almost gone back to sort of an old school way of managing, which is, it can be the right way to do things sometimes. I think the Johnny Phillips article, which is always a good read, said how analytical Gary O'Neill wanted to be and just breaking down every moment of the game, where Vitor Pereira wants players to use their brains. They're professional football players. They should know what they're doing. They make a mistake, right, make sure you don't do it again, or do this to do the right thing. So I think they've just made it a lot more, a lot easier. You can see with the celebrations of the players yesterday as well. A lot of them hugging, laughing with Vitor Pereira. He was really excited towards the end. It's just nice to see that again. And I'm hoping that we can continue to build on that between now and the end of the season, because it's been a few years really where we've had a lot of momentum going into a new campaign. For the last 2-3 years under Lopetegui, it was the same. Under Gary O'Neill, just seemed to die a death. And I'm hoping now that survival's close. Normally what happens is you get survival and then the players team to be on the beach. If we can carry on, we have got some tough games still. We've still got to play, I say United, who've been all over the shop, but I think we've still got to play Man City, haven't we, before the end of the campaign. There are some tough games still in there, but there's every chance we can build on that and hopefully have a decent end to the season. But we'll the Cunha situation, George. So unless you've been living under a rock, everyone, you would have seen what happened with Matheus Cunha. I've been pretty vocal about it. It's been a bit of a 50-50 split, to be fair, Jord, because some people have agreed with what I've said. I've seen some neutral fans talk about it and have agreed with what they've said. Some people haven't. In my opinion, I think if you look at it, it's pretty obvious what he's trying to achieve. Firstly, the interview wasn't sanctioned by the club, and I have every belief that if the club knew about that interview, it wouldn't have been released, or at least that part of the interview would not have been released. And we'll ask your thoughts on it, Jord, because we've been pretty vocal about it before. We've been pretty disappointed in regards to how he's sort of made himself out to be. Look at me, he has been the poster boy of Wolves. I cannot deny that. This season, he's been the poster boy of Wolves. Whenever anyone's talking about Wolves, it's been about Matheus Cunha. His goal contributions, his quality, the quality of goals has been fantastic. But for me, there's a way of respecting a club, the way of respecting your squad, your teammates, your staff, and your fans. And what he did over the weekend in regards to that interview, for me, was disrespectful.
Completely agree. Completely agree. I think he's very egotistical. We know this. Narcissistic, I would say as well. And he's almost trying to. What's really annoying me about this scenario, I mean, I laid into him after the red card, and rightly so, the recent one against Bournemouth. But what's really annoying me about this is he's almost like gaslighting Wolves fans a little bit, in a way of saying, well, read the article. Like, well, everyone's read the article, and everyone's read the article in the way of, yeah, you're saying, oh, I like Wolves, but I need to leave the club, was his words, I think. Yeah. I want to go on to bigger and better things. And then to come out and say, I didn't say that. Well, if you haven't said that, don't be having a go at fans or trying to disprove fans. I mean, he snipped our
image and put it on his Instagram.
We can put it on his Instagram. But it's like, if you haven't said that, like, you can like sue the Independent for libelous behaviour and get him to take the article down. But he hasn't, because he has said all that stuff. Yeah. So then he comes out on his story saying, I love the club. I like, I didn't mean it. It was meant like this way. Like, just cut the BS out. Like, why are you coming out and trying to justify what you said is because, again, you've taken a lot of heat. Your PR team have had an absolute disaster again. You've had a disaster.
Yeah.
And the long and short of it is, he's, again, another thing he said in there, which was a lie, that clubs put bids in for me in January. No club officially put a bid in for Matheus Cunha in January. Clubs were interested. No one put a bid in. And if they wanted to put a bid in, that release clause is there for everyone to see, and everyone knows it's £62.5 million. So what that happens is that the club have basically said, look, we're going to reward you for your performances. You've single-handedly kept us in the race for the first half of the season. Here's an extra 30, 40 grand a week on your contract. We'll give you a favourable release clause, and we're protecting the asset, but we're protecting you. We're giving you more money. Everyone wins in that scenario. So I don't get why. Basically, I think he's being really disingenuous to the football club here.
Yeah.
The fans, but also the people behind the scenes as well. Like, don't start saying I didn't say it or I'm not trying to leave. Of course you're trying to leave. That's why you've engineered a real favourable release clause for you to go. Because, again, coming back to it, people are talking about Tyler Diblin going in the summer for 100 million quid. Joao Pedro for 100 million quid. Stupid figures, right? But that's because there's not a release clause in place, and those clubs can say, you know what, they're worth that to us. Pay it or do one.
Yeah.
Cunha, we bent over and said, you know what, we'll do this for you. We could quite easily get 80, 90 million quid for you in today's market. 62.5 million quid. Thank you for what you've done. You can go with our blessing. Keep us up this season. No problem. But he's just damaging his reputation.
I think he
is. With fans, big time.
He is. Well, yeah, I think you bang on because, you're listening on different podcasts or radio stations now, even non-Wolves podcasts and shows, and they're talking about his attitude and his reputation. That's worrying for me because if these people are thinking that, other clubs are thinking that as well. I have no doubt he'll go because I think 62 million in this current market for a player that can produce the numbers he has been producing, whether it's in the Premier League or whether it's a team in Spain or France or whatever, then I think, he will go. But it's I genuinely think, the new contract, I think the club may have been scared that if they don't sign him up to something favourable, he might refuse to play between then and the end of the season. Because that was just, maybe I'm reading too much into it, maybe it's harsh on Matheus, but I just feel that that's the vibe that I was getting, that, he might kick up a fuss if things haven't gone his way. We've given him that deal now. It was, and like you said, that the sort of social media posts, it's just to try and take, he said it, full stop, he said it. He's trying to take attention away from that. But like you said, it's like me saying, oh, Jord, I really like your jumper, but you're a dickhead. It's like, you can't say one nice thing just to marry up and
come out and go, but I didn't mean it like that. I've said nice thing. Yeah, it's ridiculous. And that's what's annoyed me with it all. Like, and again, Matheus Cunha, the footballer, is a fantastic footballer. Matheus Cunha, with the petulance and the antics and everything, is a bit of a prick. I'm sorry to say. Like, that's just how it comes across to me. And I know I said this a few weeks ago on here when it got a bit heated about him. Like, there's no team in world football that are functioning and top performing at the moment and touching him with a barge pole. Radioactive. Like, he'll start throwing his toys out the pram when it's not going his way, and he'd be a problem. That's why it didn't work at Atletico Madrid. And I think the only place he goes this summer, genuinely saying it now, as in like start of April, I think he either stays with Wolves past the summer window or he's in Saudi. Because I can't see any sort of top European side or a club that Matheus Cunha would want to choose to go to would want to touch him with a barge pole at all.
It's strange because there is a potential, and this is the thing for me. I think maybe he's already got something lined up. I don't know, but if you haven't got a move agreed or whatever, and you're saying the stuff that you have agreed, come the early August when you're still in the Wolves squad, you're gonna look like a bit of an idiot, and that's why I think really we could talk about Matheus Nunes. He knew that there was a move there for him, and that's why he acted the way he acted. I think, people talk to me. I think Neves did it in the right way. Jota, we don't really know because it's behind the seat, pre-season, but he went without a fuss. Neto, we always knew was going to leave. but he didn't act in a disrespectful or stupid way towards the club, I don't think. So, I think they've acted the correct way, even though as fans we knew they were leaving. And that's what people are saying to me. Well, you knew he was going to leave. I don't care if I knew he was going to leave. I don't expect for him to be talking about it, especially saying when at the time the job wasn't done. We could have easily been going into this game against Ipswich only 3 or 6 points, on Saturday evening, only 6 points adrift. So, and I, like I said earlier, I have no doubt the club are really frustrated by those comments. And, there's some questions about what we think between him and now and the end of the season. You asked me earlier, Jord, if we beat Ipswich, for argument's sake, or get something against Ipswich, you go 4 games unbeaten, does he walk straight back into the team for the match against Spurs? I don't know. I feel you can't change a winning formula. I think it would be very unfair on either Jean-Ric Bellegarde or Menezes if they were to drop out for Cunha to come straight back in. But at the same time, I think Vitor Pereira still recognises that Matheus Cunha is probably the best footballer in the team at the moment. But for me, I would back players that have been doing the job and players that want to play for this football club. That's my opinion.
Well, it comes back to what I said as well a few weeks ago on the podcast. Like, if I'm Vitor Pereira, how can I trust Matheus Cunha to stay on a football pitch and do what I asked for and not act in a way and let his teammates down again because he's got form for it? And then, again, go back to it, you've got Bellegarde, Strand Larsen and Menezes last night. Yeah, they're not of the quality of Cunha as a footballer, but they all run the bollocks off. They all do a job and they're all in it together. So how can you take one of those 3 out for Cunha based on, how it's been going since he's been suspended? I just don't get it. And the last thing before, because I'm talking about Cunha a lot here, but the last thing I would say on Cunha as well is that I feel like he needs to be grateful for the fact of the situation we got him out of at Atletico Madrid, because he wasn't even kicking a ball. Yeah. I don't think he was barely getting any minutes. He was rotting away on the bench, sometimes not even in the squad. And we've gone and give him a lifeline, an olive branch, and we needed one because we were rock bottom of the Premier League at that point. Spent good money on him, gave him a good wage. We've idolised him, we've loved him, we've adored him, and I'm just disappointed with how it's ending, really, because it is ending.
Yeah. To be fair, on that article, that's what he said. He said he was grateful because he was in a crap position. He's grateful for Wolves. But I go back to what I said earlier. You can't say one thing and then sort of say the complete opposite and expect it to still be okay, So I think he just dug himself a hole, and he dug it even further when he was posting stuff on social media. I don't know who his PR guys are or his agent is. I don't know. But it will be interesting to see how Wolves approach it, because I don't know. He may sort of... I'm never going to say he's a bad footballer, because he's not. And, if he puts the Wolves shirt on, which I have no doubt he will between now and the end of the season, and puts the ball in the back of it, obviously I'm going to celebrate, and obviously I'm going to praise him and talk about it. But I just think the way, as a person, he's gone about this, in my opinion, is wrong. And it's, it's frustrating. It's one of those things. We'll finish off, Jord. We've got about 5-10 minutes. We'll quickly talk about some of the questions that we've had. Some interesting ones coming in, of course, in regards to the current situation at the club. Funny one here from Gully. Obviously, I did ask him about coming on this podcast, but now he's too famous rubbing his shoulders on the Steve Bull birthday video.
Yeah, he's got that frozen coin now, hasn't he?
Yeah, no, I appreciate. Great to see Gully involved in that. Prime Dicko Afobe Sacco start for this Wolves team. Discuss. I was thinking about this because I saw it when I was at work earlier, and I think they'd probably get minutes for this team, but when everyone's fresh, Sacco at a push might start, but I don't think Afobe and Dicko get in.
I don't know. I liked Afobe.
They were good. I think all 3 get minutes. I'm not starting Afobe ahead of Strand Larsen, because a prime Afobe could not do it in the Premier League. And Dicko, I think, great player, but again, never really would have. He never got that move to the Premier League, I suppose. So you never see what he was like. I think Sacco gets a good amount of game time though. Fit Sacco in his prime was a very good footballer.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, they all were. But I think what you've got to take from that is, what I would say about that is that you just see the difference in quality from the Championship to the Premier League in terms of the teams that have been coming up over the last few years and going straight back down. And I'm sure that Ipswich fans would have been saying that about Hutchinson, and all these players when they came up, Jack Clark, and then they've done barely nothing really. So
Yeah.
nostalgically, yeah, loved them, but probably not in reality is what I would say.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. Right, Ethan Diggory, what are the priority positions to sign in the summer? Now, of course, we've already talked about the defence, Jordan. I think unless there's big changes or players come up, the defence, especially the centre backs, let's say, I think will be fine. Right wing back, there may be a discussion about because obviously Semedo's contract is expiring. We don't know whether Pedro Lima is going to sort of get the opportunity to make that place his own, or even Matt Doherty moves back out across the right wing back. But I would say I think it's the attacking positions for me, isn't it? Maybe a backup striker for Strand Larsen. Obviously, Cunha, we assume will go, and sort of those players around Strand Larsen then added a bit more quality and hopefully pace in those positions. I'd say.
Was the question
Priority
what?
positions to sign?
Priority. Yeah, it's going to be a Cunha replacement is the priority because we're going to get 62.5 million quid for him, and we've got to put that back into the squad within 2 or 3 players. I think that right wing back's massive. I think left wing back's going to be massive as well because we haven't got anyone else out there at the moment.
Yeah.
We need to give Aitnery some competition. Another one who I think could be off.
Hugo Bueno maybe, but again, he could be off. I think if the price is right,
Yeah, I wouldn't be averse to selling Hugo. Again, I think he's a good footballer. We were there for his Premier League debut at Palace with the good old days with the assist. Yeah, I don't think Berno's going to be playing for Wolves personally. I think Aitnery will move on at some point as well.
I was talking to somebody about Bueno yesterday because if he was to be sold, and I think his stock's probably the highest it's ever going to be, especially if Feyenoord continue, because I think they're still in the Champions League, aren't they? It will be a PSR dream for Wolves because he was in the academy. He signed for like 50k or whatever. That's going to be all. If you say they do well, you could probably squeeze 25, 30 million for Bueno. I think that's a dream opportunity for Wolves to sell. You talk about big sales. That's an opportunity there, I think personally. But we'll wait and see. Go on, George.
I was going to say another one. I think goalkeeper's going to be one that's addressed as well. I really do. I think it sounds like I'm just a Saar hater, and I am a little bit, but I do appreciate he's a very good shot stopper. I think, in the modern game, I don't think Saar's what we want.
No. Even yesterday, there were a couple of moments that are a bit... Yeah. Johnson obviously not rated. You assume he'll move on. They might have to take a bit of a hit on him, I suppose. With him being homegrown, he may have held his value very slightly. But he got four first-team goalkeepers there. And I don't know. Yeah, it will be an interesting one on that front as well. Amar's Music Show, interesting question. Is selling Cunha +1, in his opinion, it's most likely to be Ryan Aitnouri, but there could be other ways around it. Going to give enough funds for us to be stronger next season. If we sell both, we need to replace them and have ready-made Premier League players for us to move up the table. Otherwise, we'll have another relegation battle. So going back to... So I think you would sell over Aitnouri or Bueno, for argument's sake. I don't think you sell both. So if Aitnouri does go, you've probably got Bueno as a ready-made replacement if needed. You think Cunha funds and Aitnouri funds or Bueno funds, you're probably going to be having close to 85 to 90 million at least. I think that's a good budget, plus any money Fosun may or may not invest. I think that's a good budget, looking at some of the transfers that we've looked at recently, to be bringing in 3, 4, possibly even 5 quality footballers. Yes, you've got to replace them, but I think there's enough funds there. Plus sales, you would assume Fabio might go. I don't know, Jord. I think we mentioned this in terms of the self-sustainability and stuff like this. This could be a perfect window for Fosun to display that, because Cunha will go, and I've mentioned a couple of players there that are out on loan that may well go. They might not have to pump much of their own money into this transfer window, and this is exactly what they've wanted. I think we mentioned it maybe 2 or 3 months ago, where it is a slow process. It may not happen like straight away, but in 2 or 3 years' time, when you've set the foundations, there is going to be a window where it all click and that will work out.
Yeah, I think we probably need to spend, if we can get 100 million in player sales, if we put another 50 million in ourselves.
Yeah, you got to Strand Larsen's purchase. Well, I know it's already gone through, but you got to put that against the PSR as well, I suppose.
I think, you're right though. You're saying when you got Fabio there, I think Kwang or Guedes or both might go as well, and you might get a little bit of money there. I think if Sheffield United come up, I think Tommy Doyle's going there July 1st. I think Wilder loves him. I think Wilder would buy him for 10 million quid.
You got some big wages going off as well.
Sarabia, Semedo potentially. I just think, I hope Foden realise, if you stand still in the Premier League, you get swallowed up. So even if we bring in 100 million in transfer money, you still need to put money into it yourself to be able to get up that league, unless you get extremely lucky or your recruitment, every single person works, and it never usually does. But we often get recruitment wrong, I would say. We've got it right, and then we've been hit and miss. And I think actually we had a good January without breaking the bank. Yeah. I'm excited to see what Pereira. I just want them to back Pereira. I think he's proven with a squad that wasn't performing, was doomed, apparently, according to Jobless Gary. Give him some money and see what he can do, because I think he's a cracking manager so far. And again, I think there will be people saying the football hasn't been great at all times, but the football, it's all about substance. This for Pereira is about keeping us in the league this year. So give him a bit of money and see what happens. Yeah.
A few questions as well. Scott Landry, what happens with Cunha when he returns? Now, the sort of brutal Dave would say, keep him on the bench, nothing more. If we need him, we need him. But I wouldn't be rushing to put him back in the starting lineup. Like I said earlier, Jord, I think Vitor will try and integrate him as soon as he can. But I just think if we beat Ipswich, I think that would be harsh on somebody to drop out just to bring Cunha back in, who ultimately has let the side down against Bournemouth, really. But what do you think? What would be your stance on that?
If I'm the manager, I can't trust him. I'm not starting him until he proves to me that I can trust him again to not be a dickhead on the pitch and not get himself sent off and into needless situations. I think it's as simple as that for me. I think if I can't trust you, and I don't think you're going to be around next season, and we're probably 99.9% staying up, I owe you nothing. I didn't sign you. Yeah. I'm going to play the players who are going to be here next year and want to play for me. If you don't want to play for me, I owe you nothing. Yeah. And actually, we're protecting our asset with you not getting on the pitch because everyone knows the release clause. If you come back on and get yourself sent off again, no one's going to pay 62 million quid for you. So it's
that's the argument a lot of people had, saying, well, you're going to cut your nose off to spite your face. I was like, yeah, but at 62 million, people will still be interested regardless. Mm-hmm. So it will be interesting to see. And we'll finish off as well by C Count on Twitter. We all know Vitor's love of a cold pint, but who among the Talking Walls team could polish off the most in a sitting? He said his money is on Matt Cooper. I mean, I could tell you it's not me. I'm probably the worst drinker out of the panel. I think you or Joe could have a good go.
I'm not drank with Joe, so it's hard for me to say. I would say Matt, to be fair. I would say Matt. I used to be terrible, to be honest, but then
I'm still terrible.
As I put weight on and got a bit bigger, I can hold it a bit more. Yeah. So I'm actually all right now. But it's a bit of age. I would go with Matt, and then I don't know. Yeah, I don't think we're really drinking many people under the podcast. Many other podcasts under the table, to be honest.
Well, it's interesting because we're hoping to have obviously Matt's leaving at the end of the season. We're hoping to have some drinks at some point, so it could probably be put to the test then, depending on how wild the night is and where in Wolverhampton that we go. But we'll wait and see. But that should be good fun, obviously. But Jord, pretty much bang on an hour. Appreciate you jumping on. Appreciate you taking time out your busy schedule to talk Walls with me. Where can people find you if they wish?
So Jord7 on Twitter and Instagram.
Perfect. And hopefully we'll be back. Well, we will be back after the Ipswich game. And hopefully we're talking about another 3 points. And that pretty much will secure Wolves' safety in the Premier League. And Southampton may well be down by the next podcast as well, which I think will be the earliest the team has been relegated from the Premier League. So I'm sure we'll talk about that and much more on next week's podcast. If you're listening or watching on YouTube, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, be sure to leave us a 5-star rating. And until next time, guys, enjoy the rest of your week and your weekend. We'll catch you on the next one.